Welcome to Pencils and Lipstick. This is a podcast for indie authors. I'm Kat Caldwell, novelist, short story writer, and book coach. Here on Pencils and Lipstick, we're obsessed with all things story, and it is my goal to bring you the writing tips that you need to make your novel come to life. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Pencils and Lipstick. I'm Kat Caldwell, your hostess of the podcast, and it is October 5th as I record this, but this is episode 281, which will be going out October 6th. I'm running a little bit behind this week, but that's okay. There's just a little bit that I want to tell you guys about. We are going to have an interview today with Hope Cole. We have a really interesting conversation. I had a good time. I always have a good time with the people that I am interviewing, but I thought it was very fun to talk to her about her fantasy Daughter of the Void. She writes as H.R. Cole, and she just came to writing in a very interesting way and comes at it from a different point of view. She is a nonfiction freelance writer, so that's interesting that she then writes fantasy. So anyway, we are going to get into that. All of the links, of course, will be below in the show notes. Before we get into the interview, there's a couple things. It is October 6th already. Isn't that insane? We should all be getting ready for Christmas coming around. And when I say we, I mean anybody who is treating this like a business, and especially anybody who has, more than probably two books out, two or more. If you're just getting your writing done, your first book done, maybe even your second, maybe you're not thinking too much about, what should I sign up for? How should I push my books over Christmas? Because of course, Christmas is that time where people might be willing to buy your book, right? And, or gift your book to other people. So there are many ways that you can do that. You can figure out ads. You can really get into your newsletter and start sending out different newsletters. You can do your own little sale. I always do a 12 days of Christmas sale, which is between Christmas Day and King's Day. So I always do a little incentive sale there. I don't participate in too many other things. I know there are other genres, other authors that maybe put together a whole, kind of landing page of a lot of people's books. That's definitely something you can do if you are high in organization. But up until like leading up to Black Friday and Christmas, we're still in October, and there are people writing scary stories. If you like writing short stories, by the way, first little tidbit, you should probably sign up for NYC Midnight's Scary Story Challenge. Links will be in the show notes below. There's also a 250 word micro story challenge that starts in December. So you can sign up for that as well. And then there's short story challenge, which they have reduced the words of this year, starts in January. So nycmidnight.com is going to be in the show notes. I love doing NYC Midnight because they give you parameters. They give you a genre. They give you a type of character for most of them, a word or an action that has to be in there. And it just really challenges your creative brain. I have gotten past the second round in the short story ones, and I think in the 500 ones. Other than that, there are so many people signing up to do them that it's getting harder and harder to get into the second round. And I've never made it past the second round, which is too bad. I was just thinking before I got on here, like maybe I should go back onto my notes. The nice thing is that they give you critiques and notes. And sometimes it's funny because it's 3 different judges that will give you feedback, and sometimes they'll have exactly the opposite advice. And so you always have to remember that, stories are subjective. They are, a lot of them are just up to sort of your feeling of that moment. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Did you like something else? I have participated in judging short stories, and the truth is, like, some of it just comes down to like, I like this one better. And that's about it, because you have to make a decision. But I really enjoy it. I think that it pushes you if you want to start out writing short stories, or you enjoy writing short stories. I encourage you to click the link below. In the middle of those sort of short stories and Halloween and December, as many of you might know, NaNoWriMo is gone, completely done, just in flames. So Pro Writing Aid has started Novel November. It's pretty much the same idea, writing 50,000 words in the month of November, which is a pretty good start to a novel. Yes, there are novels out there that are 50,000 words. You have to be a very good writer to condense it to 50,000 words and have it be a really good book, in my opinion. That's also the opposite too. Like over 100,000 words, it better be really good writing. But 50,000 words is a really good start to a novel. It's nice to take that discipline and work every single day towards that end goal. So you're going to have to go over to prowritingaid.com, which again, the link is in the show notes. No, I am affiliate of the software, but I don't think there's any fee anyway to do that. So this is just information for you. Give it a go, give it a try. I find November being like the worst month to do that in, but I probably won't sign up for it. But actually, I don't have any travel this year except for Thanksgiving. And that's why like November is one of those months. My oldest turns 18 and then we have Thanksgiving, which we're actually traveling for. But anyway, it is a really good start. And I have to say, stepping across the English channel, actually, I started that during when NaNoWriMo was still in. And it changed completely, but it does give you sort of that discipline to have to work on a story every single day. And there is something like the chip in your brain sort of changes. So if you haven't been able to really get that discipline in where you work on your book every day, it might be something for you to consider. Okay, so it is October 6th, and this is my birthday month. So I'm going to have every single week, there's going to be a little prize for you. I'm curious about how many of you will click in the link in the show notes. Sometimes it's going to be a sale, sometimes it's going to be free. You never know, and it's just going to be for you guys. Like this is the only place that I'm going to have the link. So we will see if you guys are interested. It will be or my audiobooks or my ebooks, and you're just going to have to check the show notes below. Happy birthday, me. I really don't like birthdays. So we're going to try to celebrate a little bit more. I'm a lot like my grandmother, where she just like preferred not to tell anyone about her birthday. I do like my birthday month. Like I love October. I think it's the best month out of the entire year, but I don't love being like the center of birthday attention. It's funny. My husband is the same, although he is like the extrovert of the family, and you would think that he would really like that, but he actually doesn't. So we're kind of like a bummer as far as birthdays go. It's funny. So I have started another story. Here's the thing I was thinking today. It's really easy to come up with characters or with scenes, or the premise of a story. The hardest thing to come up with is kind of the why and what are they there for and what are they gonna do. So the arc, right? Like the actual work of the story. And so, yes, I came up with this new character and I think it's going to be funny. And it's actually going to be set here in DC, because all the characters that I have come up with really fit this area. This area is just, as a non-DMV person, observing them all, it's just, this area is very funny. I find it very entertaining. What I want to tell you is more than talking to you about writing, and yes, I should have more discipline to finish Stepping Across the Thames, which I worked on this weekend. So I'm still working towards that. I hit a wall on something and I knew that it needed to be fixed. But you know how your brain is just like, oh, I don't really want to do this work right now. And then a new character came to my mind. And so I did some dictation on that one. But then I sat down and I worked on my other one. And yes, it will be out early 2026. But um, what I want to tell you guys a little bit about before we go into the interview is, as writers, with the crazy world that is happening right now, I want to encourage you to be very present where you are and be able to be that person who can observe and who can maybe even have some try to understand the people around you and listen to the people around you and maybe hold off on judgment, but to have try to be so present that you can not be upset or angry, but you can actually possibly even enjoy where you are because you are kind of on another level of your humanity here. This is something that I had to learn living abroad, where you come to the realization that not everyone around you thinks like you anymore. Because let's face it, wherever you grow up, wherever you live now, there's a good percentage of people who think like you, live like you, understand the day-to-day circumstances around you. They understand how to get around the grocery store and where to go and the driving rules and all of that, right? Like kind of the unspoken rules. But when you move abroad, you have to realize that now you're kind of the odd person out. And instead of being very, this is not how it should be, and it's better where I'm from, which believe me, I moved abroad very young and I went through that phase as well. Like, well, we do it better, I do it better. Why is the flour near the dried beans? Like that makes no sense. It should be where the sugar is, and having very high, like very strong opinions about this. And it's fine to have opinions. So hear me out. If you can, maybe put your opinions aside in order to observe the people around you as we go into Halloween and company parties and Thanksgiving with family and Christmas with family and friends, possibly listening and being present in the moment of trying to have a good time, right? A good life, and just seeing what everyone else is doing. I would be surprised if you didn't see a different dimension of the people around you, most likely as well the people that you love. Because I know that things are very tense in a lot of countries right now. I think as creatives and as artists, of course, you have opinions about stuff, but the truth is, we don't always need to tell them. And the truth is, trying to put our opinions on people a lot of times keeps us in this high cortisol state, right? And I believe personally that if you're in high cortisol, your creativity is very low. And so I would encourage you to find a way to enjoy life, regardless of really what is happening around you. And I have a funny story about that on my Instagram and on my TikTok if you want to go check it out, where I tell you a situation in which a doctor was just kind of crazy with me. But I had already determined that I was going to be more present and be just sort of experiencing France more than putting, my ideals out onto where I lived. And it's a lot easier said than done. And you'd think that it would come naturally, but it doesn't actually. So I just want us to get through the holidays, not just like gritting our teeth through it, but to have a good time through it and to have our creativity not depleted by possible too high cortisol levels. Okay. So if you don't agree with me, that's totally fine. Hopefully, I'm making you think a little bit. If you want to discuss it more, you can always find me at Kat Caldwell _author on Instagram. You can find me on TikTok. You can talk to me there. You can get on my newsletter and tell me, no, I don't agree with you. You can you can make a comment in YouTube. Maybe I'm not seeing it all. It's okay. It's okay. That's just my thought, my encouragement. Be present. Try to be sort of on this creativity level of observing life. See what happens. All right, let's get into the interview before before I just keep saying the same thing over and over again. H.R. Cole is a Pennsylvania native who completed her first fantasy novel at the age of 12. She's remained an avid writer and has one published middle grade novel in a successful health journalism career. Cole lives with her husband, dogs, and cats in the mountainous upstate New York, and her book is called Daughter of the Void, and it is the Chains of Fate trilogy, book one, which we will have the link in the show notes below. Let's get into the interview. Okay. Welcome to the show, Hope. I'm so happy to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Glad to be here.
So, as I was saying in your bio, you started writing or wrote a full book at age 12. Is this true?
That's true. That's true.
Okay, so you caught the writing bug. I mean, not just like writing, all of us had to take creative writing class, but you were like committed to writing a whole book. So what happened to that book, and then what has happened since? Because
Oh
you're not
boy.
12 anymore,
Okay.
I would say.
I'm not. There's been a couple decades in there since, but growing up, writing was the best way that I could express. It's kind of
Mm,
my love language, I guess, for the people around me. And it was such a part of my life. I love to read, and my grandmother really instilled in me through, every time I went to visit her, we would take a trip to the bookstore, and it was just such a
nice.
wonderful thing sitting. I remember sitting on the floor in the bookstore, pulling off, books and looking at their covers and picking out the one that grandma was going to buy for me, that weekend.
Yeah.
So I just had such a love of writing that I started using that to express my care and appreciation for those around me. So that first book I actually wrote for my oldest brother, and it was just,
Oh,
he was the main character, and of course I included all my other family members in minor roles throughout, but it was a grand adventure for him because all of us kids grew up with a appreciation for fantasy and literature, and it was
oh,
just a
that's
great.
so cute.
He still has it, I think, even though, I wonder if I put him on the spot about it, if he still
Maybe
read
like
it.
it's in a box
Yeah,
somewhere.
right. Sure, I've got that still.
So did you continue to write after that? Like did it sort of catch and you wrote throughout high school?
I did, and I took that same model and I applied it to my friends. So we would be sitting. I had an unbelievably long bus ride. I had an hour and a half bus ride. Yes, we
Oh my
were we
gosh.
were out in the country. I was the last stop on the bus. So I had lots of time, and I would put my friends in these really fun short stories, and they would love it because most of them would be relevant to school in some way. You walk into the janitor's closet and you're in a new world or something.
Yeah.
Just these fun little things. So I kept it up, and those journals I found them years later in a closet. I was like, oh
Oh,
my
fun.
gosh.
So who were you influenced by? What are the books that your grandmother would buy you?
So my biggest influence, honestly, was really old American poetry, oddly enough.
What? Okay.
Yes, I know. Yeah, it takes some wild turns in this story. My grandmother was a poet herself, though we tried for years to track down some of her works because they were published. And unfortunately, after she died, we had no way, no connection to know
Right.
where they were or what name she published them under or any of that. So
Oh, that's so sad.
I know that it has been a goal of mine to find those, but she had volumes and volumes and volumes of old American poetry that she would read to me growing up. And I just had such a love of that, the storytelling, because a lot of old poetry, not only does it have the rhyming sequence,
Mm-hmm.
we've moved away from that a little bit more modern poetry, but the old poems, they had a very nursery rhyme like cadence to them, and they always told these amazing tales and stories, and heroes and dragons, and it was just the words were so poetic, and
Yeah.
the imagery so powerful. That's what really got me, and as a kid.
Yeah. You're actually making me remember my grandmother would do that too. But I think well, I'm from the 80s, so we didn't have tons of books around, so it
Mm-hmm.
was whatever she could pull off the shelves, and I can see it was like a hardcover book with like a embossed child on there, and it was like
Mm-hmm.
poetry for children or something like that. And they were long, they were like pages and pages
Yes.
long.
Mm-hmm.
And we would be in her bed and she would read them. And they were always a story, like
Mm-hmm.
of some sort of adventure, maybe probably a moral to the story.
Yes, always, almost always.
Trying
But
to
you know,
teach us.
that's carried with me even now. We have this fabulous biannual book sale near where I live, and it's just this giant warehouse
Oh,
that you can go in with a box and you just fill this box. But they have a whole wall that's poetry. So my favorite thing to
nice.
do is go through and find the really old poetry books, and I just take them all home. And
Yeah.
obviously have not read all of them. They're above my computer here, but it's just such a nostalgic thing for me. It's
Yeah.
kind of like I always had that connection to my grandma, as long as, and
Yeah,
I
of
have her
course.
books too, the ones that were her originals. So,
Right. I mean, it's a good reminder too that we don't always really need to go out and buy the latest kids book.
right.
Actually, it's okay to read them quite grown, what we would consider maybe grown up. I don't think my grandmother ever thought of like a children's book. It was just like she
Yeah.
read Anne of Avonlea to us, it was just like whatever
Hmm.
book she had on the shelf um was what got read. Like she
That's right.
didn't go running
Yes.
out, to buy all the board books.
Hmm.
So that is such a fun. Well, we're all going to have to figure out where that warehouse is too. So
I'll send you the details. It's a wonderful public event here in the Finger Lakes region if you're ever up this
that's
way.
so
So,
cool. I got like, of course, Instagram sells me all the books and all the things. And there's some warehouse in Ohio that sells books for $1.25. And I did map it out, and it would take me like lots of gas money to get there. So I was like, I'm not sure my husband's gonna really think that this is,
you
compensating
gotta
him.
lure him with something else. You gotta make a weekend trip and
Yeah,
say,
to
"Oh, by the
Ohio.
way, while we're here, yeah, there's things in Ohio."
It's corn. I'm from that area, so like, oh, we can go back. Anyway, that's funny. Yes, I was just thinking today, all the libraries do their sales in the fall, right? So
Hmm.
yeah, we're book obsessed. It's okay. So clearly your book obsession has not dissipated as the years go on. So what did you do in college? Did you study creative writing? Did you move away
Actually,
from writing?
veterinary technology. Oddly, yeah,
Why not?
right. I know, right? You're surprised.
Dragons need a vet.
Maybe that's where my love of small animals, large
Yeah.
animals comes from.
So did you
But
do large animals?
I did do large animal
Wow.
at the first couple years, and then it's a little bit harder niche to get into in this
Okay.
area. So there's just more opportunities for small animals.
Sure.
So
Lots more people have cats and dogs than
right,
horses.
right,
I would
right.
say.
So I did for veterinary technology, and I did that for many years. Ended up managing four doctor hospital at one point in time, and
Were you
it's just
writing as well?
so at that point it was not really writing.
Yeah, it's
I would
hard.
try a short story here or there, submit to a contest, and it would rekindle it for me. But it's hard when you get out of that fun part of life where you're not paying bills,
Yes, I
right?
know. I
And then
know.
suddenly you have all these responsibilities, and you got laundry
Yes.
and chores, and money has to
It's
go all
such
over
a
the place.
bummer.
It's a
And you're
bummer.
driving the hour and a half instead of the bus driver
That's
driving the
right.
hour and a
That's
half.
right.
It changes
So
everything. So, but it didn't, the bug never left you, but the idea of being a writer wasn't necessarily like a career option that you thought
correct.
of. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, I
It
think most.
wasn't sorry, go ahead.
No, I just think that's pretty common. Most of us are not told to go be a writer.
Right. Which is sad because we should all pursue the things that speak
Yeah.
to our souls, right? That should be how we get through life. But I guess if you find your way there eventually, that's good enough.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. I think it is an option. It's more out there now as an option, right? It's not like it's easier, because I don't think it's easy at all, but at least it is, the pathway I think is clearer than before. Because I mean, I've grown up through the whole like ebook and everything, and Amazon. I mean,
Yes,
Amazon
yes.
did open a portal, right, for this to be an actual possibility to pursue without any gatekeepers, which is nice. It's nice also to get the book through a gatekeeper. So like either way.
Yes, right, absolutely.
So what caused you to go back to writing? Because you've done journalism as well. Was that
Right.
during as you're like doing all the animal stuff?
It was so I love animals. I love them dearly, and I still passionate about animal care and wellness. But the veterinary industry is not for the weak of heart.
Hmm.
So you don't only get to cuddle kittens and puppies. It's not this wonderful job where you walk in and it's snuggles and love. You get to see the flip side of that, which is the abuse cases
Oof.
and and it after 10 plus years of it kind of kills a little bit of you to
Yeah,
see
I
that.
bet. Yeah.
And the clinic I worked for was the case handler for the county's abuse cases, and that
Oh,
just you hear about these atrocities, but when you actually see it, when it's actually in your hands, it's just tough. It's really, really
yeah.
tough and heartbreaking.
I would
So
lose faith in humanity.
you
Like,
do, you
ugh.
do. Honestly, you do. And I got to a point of that where I was like, I need a change,
Yeah, I bet. That's so
and so
depressing. Like,
yes, yes. And it really tanked my mental health for sure.
yeah, I bet. And your
Um,
creativity, like, why? Like that, it just
yes.
like blocks everything to see that kind of stuff. Like,
Yes,
mm,
so sad, just so sad. So I was like, well, what else can I do? Because unfortunately, when you
okay,
go to college for a very specific job, that's the job
right,
you do.
right.
Um, but I was like, you know what? I'm good at writing.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to try the freelance route. So I did my research and I spent a lot of time taking really small, grindy, low pay jobs where you're just churning out, SEO content basically. And
Mm-hmm.
I slowly had to build up a reputation of reliability and quality. And that's the path you have to take when you don't have connections right off the get
Right.
go. But thankfully, I managed to interview for a job doing lower level health content, which the one thing that veterinary technology did set me up for was a pretty good working knowledge of medicine, because the
Sure.
medicine in the animal world is very, very similar, if not in some ways a little more advanced than in the human world. We
Well,
have,
that's a whole topic we should go
yes,
down
right? You should
someday.
know. Yes, right now. Right now.
I'm glad to
So,
know my dog's in good hands today. Like, it's more
yes,
advanced. Awesome.
yes. More advanced. Because if you think about it, a veterinarian has to specialize in multiple
Mm,
species. So the way you treat, say, an iguana is very different than how you would treat a dog or a cat. And a veterinarian has to be
huh.
versed in all of these, whereas a people doctor has to specialize in people.
And
So
usually just like the nose or
right,
like,
right. And you can get, yes, you can get very specific in human medicine. You can do that in veterinarian medicine too, but we're, or at least they are not as set up to be in that space yet. You're
sure,
seeing it a little more with the pet insurance and stuff, but
sure, sure.
it's a little harder for the average pet owner to afford a
Yeah.
specialist for their pet.
Very true. Yes. There are some. There are some. Yeah. So you decided on the health route because I would assume the lingo is a bit similar, just like your studies, you're able to read medical studies, whereas maybe if you hadn't studied veterinary medicine, you wouldn't. I'm sure it just is different, right? Like you understand it, whereas maybe if I read the same thing, I'd be like, well, sure, I don't know what this
Yeah.
said.
Yeah, it definitely sets you up
Okay,
to have that working knowledge. And
sure.
honestly, the internet is so amazing that you can become an in-depth expert on a topic if you just have the time and dedication. The
Mm.
knowledge is out there and available. And so in order to advance in the health writing world, I had to kind of pick a field where I was like, I'm going
Oh,
to really dedicate myself to learning everything I can about this. Obviously, I'm not a medical professional, so to speak. I'm not a doctor or nurse or anything like that, but I can still learn and be knowledgeable so
Sure.
that when I'm given an assignment for medical content, I can write it intelligently.
Sure.
So I ended up really focusing on mental health and psychology because it's just a very important and often overlooked area.
Right. Yeah. So do you think that that is an option these days for other writers as well? Like if they're trying to get their books out, but they need an income, is that still being a freelance writer? Is that still with work and dedication, obviously? Is that still a pathway, do you think?
So I on any other day I would say yes, but
Mm,
here's the caveat is that with AI,
it's changing, isn't it?
it's changing and honestly, my job, my medical journalism job will be one of the first to go. And
That's so sad though,
it
because
is so
I
sad.
I use Chat GPT for some things and I'm like, yeah, okay, same sentence, next paragraph down. Like there's so many times where it says things, it has a whole sentence that you're like, you literally said nothing. Like
Yeah.
that's what concerns me is it's just going to churn out, it's basically going to use your old articles to churn out another article, but years later, and it might not be the same application or just like vague, it's where you feel
Yes.
like you read something but you're not actually sure what you read
Right.
because it
Right.
doesn't give you anything. It does concern me, honestly, this AI thing.
It is concerning and if it does already use my articles. Sometimes if you ask ChatGPT to source, it will come up with something that I've written. And the downside is that it doesn't just pull from my work, it pulls from 20, 30, 40 other works. And unfortunately, if there's something that's misinformation in one of those and ChatGPT picks it up, it will present it
As
and
fact.
it will be misinformation in what ChatGPT is
Yeah.
presenting. So
Yeah.
it is not error free. And
You're
some
right.
of these little things, there's a real danger and subtle inaccuracy, especially
Yeah.
in medical writing, because you can call something, say, an autoimmune condition when it's really an immune mediated condition. And that might not make much difference to somebody who just wants to know about, a particular condition, but it does mean something different. It does imply
Right.
something different. And if we just keep reiterating the wrong thing, then that what it actually is gets lost down the line. So
Yes, I know. And we're going to get to the point where we can't trust anything,
right.
which is very scary, but we'll leave that for another day. Like honestly, well, my whole thing with AI with writers is that there's very little we can do about it. It is unfortunately in the hands of people that we have no control over. So it's whether or not they control it. Like, you
Right,
know,
right.
unfortunately. So we're not going to encourage anyone to go freelance writing because it's definitely changing. Well,
Yes,
okay.
yes.
We'll figure it out. The whole world's going to change. Jobs are going to change. So you've decided to come out then, like at some point you were like, I'm going to write a book, and not just a
Mhm.
book, you're going to write a trilogy because you've already put it out there. I see this on Amazon
Yes.
because it's a
Mhm,
whole trilogy. So
mhm.
when did this start? Like
So
this beginning?
I've always my heart has always been in the creative writing. The medical writing was just something I could do when I
Right.
needed something to do. But the creative writing's where my heart's always been, and it's always
Right.
been in fantasy. Obviously, my grandmother reading me these poems, so I've kept it on the back burner for a long time. And I
Yeah.
finally was like, I'm spending all this time writing. Why am I not writing what I enjoy?
Yeah.
So because there was and then I had an answer for that too. It's this internal argument, right? So I work, 8 hours every day doing very technical writing,
It's
staring at my
tiring.
computer. It's difficult to switch modes and spend another 4 hours doing creative writing. It's like
Yeah.
you gotta eat dinner. You gotta
Yes.
get up. You gotta
You got to do laundry,
there's right,
unfortunately.
right. That's what AI should be doing for me is my laundry.
Seriously. Seriously. Where is the robot that will get the stains out of
Right.
my kids' clothes? That's what I need. All right. So how did you, I mean, yeah, and just health-wise, sitting looking at a screen for 8 hours a day already between your research and your writing. How, that's a lot. So how did you come up with a compensating or force yourself maybe to do that? What did you decide to do?
I basically I do that are kind of unproductive and mindless. And I was like, I'm going to cut some of these out and I'm going to insert this thing that I enjoy. And so, you catch yourself and it's easy. And sometimes you're just so burned out at the end of the day, you sit down and you turn on the TV and you
Yep.
just send it. And then suddenly 5 hours are gone and you're like, oh my gosh, it's time for bed. So I was really mindful about where my time was going. I allocated, like, if I sat down and I was like, I'm about to watch 3 hours of, the British Bake Off, I'm going to write
Love that show.
instead. I know, right? I do. I am guilty of that still. But
It makes me want to eat
show.
though.
Oh my gosh. It makes me want to, I feel like I have this false sense that I could bake an amazing cake.
I bought his book even and I was like, I'm going to make scones. Not as easy as it is. He's all like, everyone should be able to do this. And then, well, they're definitely not as pretty. Yeah. So it's dangerous to watch that show. So we should just be right.
Warning.
You will want to eat and bake. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I actually stopped watching television as well because it was just one of my things that I just couldn't seem to stop if I started. And so, right. I mean, I don't really, it's not like anyone has to do what I did, but it definitely gets back some time, then, and like, okay, if I can write at least 1,000 words or 1,500 words, well, then maybe I could watch a show, right. And then you get to the point where you're like, it's okay. Maybe I'll write another 1,000.
Yeah, no, then you get in that nice flow and then suddenly, it just kind of happens. And that's always the goal. And the other thing is, I feel like if people are going to try to carve out time in their day to sit down and do creative writing or whatever kind of writing, maybe you want to write a biography or, on a topic that you're an expert on, is that it's okay. Be kind to yourself. Like, do not beat yourself up. If you really just need to take a day and like go outside, go sit on your porch with a coffee and just enjoy the sunshine or the fresh air, that it is okay. If you'd miss a day of writing or, you got to be kind to yourself through the process. Otherwise, you're going to become resentful and hate it. And then you're never going to write again.
Right. Yes. Yeah. You have to give your brain some rest. And I am super guilty of overworking and I have to force myself outside. I think especially when you find the flow's not coming, it's like, well, it's probably your body telling you that you need a break. And I think just because it's usually a job that we're doing on the side of our jobs that we think like we don't deserve a break from, like for some reason we don't see it as work. And I was like, yeah, but it takes so much energy to think of an entirely new world and new people and all these things, right? So yes, it's good to have discipline, but it's also good to have rest.
Yes, and in all things, in all areas of your life, not just in writing, like just be kind to yourself. But that's the bottom line, like in everything, in all ways.
So when you started writing Daughter of the Void, was romantasy a thing?
No. So I actually started this book 8+ years ago. Now, I took a break in between there, probably a 7-year break. So
yeah, I mean, it's hard to say when things start. I mean, I have notes on books I haven't started yet. Right. What do I say? Like I started them 15 years ago? Like, nah, whatever.
Right. So back then it was not what it is now.
So it was going to be like, it was going to be fantasy in your head.
Fantasy, and it was going to have romance. But back then we didn't. Romance. That's the we didn't. World, right? Yeah. Look, I grew up reading fairy tales where there's a girl locked in a tower and the prince is coming. Like I wanted the romance. I grew up with that. That is,
I watched Lord of the Rings being like, when is someone going to fall in love?
Right.
finally the elves came, or whatever her name was. And I was
That's
like,
right.
oh, that took too long.
So I knew it needed, I wanted it to have that because that's what I enjoy
Of
reading.
course.
It
Of course.
wasn't something I was writing to market because that market
Right.
wasn't really there
It
back
wasn't there. But in
then.
the last 2 years, do you think?
Oh yeah, probably maybe even the last 5.
I think Throne of Glass probably made it a thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Is yours YA?
No, no, no,
No.
no.
So yours is adult. That's another thing. Now you have to separate your fantasy from YA and adult. And people can get mad at you for that. So, okay, let's back up a little bit for anyone who might not know. What is the difference now these days, if you, as far as you know, between romantasy and fantasy and romance?
Oh
And these are
boy.
these are terms that like could change by the time this episode comes out, which
Oh,
is
sure.
really
And
frustrating.
yes. So romance and sex are not new to fantasy.
No.
I was, I mean, there are some amazing, series out there that are 20 years old that had very detailed sex scenes, some of them not consensual, right? But we don't call
Oh
them
yes.
romantasy. They're just
Especially
fantasy.
not consensual, I would
Yeah,
say.
that's been a big thing in fantasy for a long time.
Right.
So the evolution into romantasy, I think, came about with, box office hits like Throne of Glass, and
Okay.
we have so many out there. But the genre of romantasy itself, in my opinion, um, it's a little unfair to the reader to call everything romantasy. It's an
Mm,
umbrella term, and it
hmm.
has a really big spectrum. Excuse me. So at the far end, on one side, you have romantic fantasy, and
Okay.
that is a fantasy story with a strong romantic element.
Okay.
But the fantasy story is standalone. If you took the romance out of it, you would still have this really epic adventure that
Okay.
carries you through. And then on the other far end of the spectrum, you're going to have fantasy romance. Now that's a romance. That's the romance is central to the plot. You take the romance away and there is no plot. That
Yeah.
is the story.
Yeah.
And then there's everything in between.
Right. And in literally like up till 2 years ago, that was paranormal romance, which
Mm-hmm.
encompassed anything that,
Right.
was a romance within a world that was not this world. It could have
Right.
dragons or it could have, you know, special powers. Like it didn't really matter. So now I would say Sarah J. Maas probably changed that. Well, her marketing team changed it. So
Right.
I
Right.
don't think she thought of that. So when you were writing this, you had the romance as part of the plot, or were you writing more fantasy with romance subplot?
The romance was part of the plot because
Okay.
I wanted that to be the story within the story.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
as a fantasy lover, the world building and the
Yeah.
journey was also really important to me. I wasn't gonna let that go. But
Yeah,
the
of
romance
course.
had to happen in there.
Okay.
So
So
that
now you have a romantasy. We'll see.
now I have a romantasy. But I try to be, it's a fine line to walk. I try
Mm,
to be upfront about, this is a romantic fantasy. If
mm.
you don't want the world building, if you don't want fight scenes, if you don't want, you know, cool places and descriptions, this might not be for you. If you just want a story about two people hooking up like every other chapter, that's not what this
With some
is.
magic, yeah. And that is the danger about all of this, right? Because romance, Harlequin romance, or what Harlequin became, is not the same as every other love story. And the
Right.
readership will sometimes get really upset about it.
Right, right.
So they can't just pick up any book that has, well, what are the fantastical elements in your book? Because I almost said dragons, but that's just my brain's go-to. So what are the fantastical elements in Daughter of the Void?
So they're fairly unique to Daughter of the Void. I have a magic system that I based loosely off of physics in our world.
Wow. Okay.
So So it has a unique magic system. I have griffins. I have different races that are called faithful they're just unique to me. They're just things that I made up in my imagination.
Mm-hmm.
And there are dragons. They're mentioned. You don't get to see them till
Mm.
the later installments, but they do get a nice little cameo in book one. And then you have these beings. You have mages who can manipulate this unique magic system, and you have people called wardens, and they're kind of like an anti-mage. They're born with the ability they can suppress and negate magic. So they're kind
Okay.
of keep the mages from just running off and ruining the world.
Okay. And so in fantasy, especially with a magical system, is it usually the power struggle between pro and anti-magic, or is that not always the case?
I don't think that's always the case. I would say that's a common theme.
Okay.
But a lot of times magic in fantasy is portrayed as just another part of the world. You know,
Okay.
people are blacksmiths or they're mages, and it's just a common trade.
Yeah.
And within that, there's probably a good and a bad side, just as in anything. There's evil people and there's people who are
Mm-hmm.
good, and then that's where the conflict comes into. I would say most fantasy, the conflict itself is a power struggle for personal power rather than magical power. So the antagonist might be a mage, or they might not. They just might be
Mm-hmm.
an evil king who wants to rule the world.
But a lot of the difference between like a strictly romance in a fantastical world and a fantasy with romance is that the plot of a fantasy with romance is really incorporating the whole world, right? Like there's something happening that's a
Right.
bigger deal within the world, and the couple's falling in love with it. Whereas like romance in a paranormal world is usually like, well, a more personal,
Yes,
maybe,
perfect. Yeah,
conflict.
that's a great way to explain it. Yes.
Okay.
In
So
my
then,
opinion, right? In my opinion.
yeah, we always have to put a caveat it that way. But it
That's
is
right.
important to understand that as readers too, the more that like things sort of like they seem to be separating and then getting that sort of blurred line,
Yes, yes.
and then people get confused, which I advocate for everyone to just pull a book off the shelf and read it. I don't like that's how I grew up. Like,
Same, same.
you would just read it and you wouldn't really worry about whether this was like romantasy or fantasy. And again, you would wait forever for the love story to finally show up.
Right. If it even did.
If
And
it even
sometimes,
did.
yeah, you'd be done and it would never have been
I
there.
know, like the Narnia series. I'm like, come on. I was
Oh,
always
I
looking for love
know.
stories.
Same. I felt the same way about that one. Yeah, I'm with you on
It's like, come on, I mean, we gotta, whatever. We'll bring it up with C.S. Lewis some other time. AI will
that.
bring up his brain
Oh boy, they
assembly.
will too, right?
So as you were writing this, was there anything that you had to figure out craft wise between like writing short stories as a kid and then writing, very nonfiction journalistic writing and then writing a novel? Was there anything that you had to sort of like battle with craft wise as a writer?
Yeah, I would say there's two main things that came up during that process. The first is short story writing for me can be very what they call discovery writing. You
Mm-hmm.
just sit down and it happens as you're writing it.
Right.
The novel is different. When you have so many working pieces, you have, at least I have to have it written down somewhere. I have to plot it
Mm-hmm.
out because you have somebody traveling from here to here in 2 days, but then this other thing happened in the meantime, and all of these things have to line up and make sense so that there are plot holes or just to keep the realism alive. You're already in a fantasy world, so it's important that within that world things still make sense.
Yes.
That's how the immersion happens.
Yes. And I always tell whenever I'm editing, the reader's reading this way quicker than you've written it. And so we
Right.
remember what happened to that guy.
Right, that's right. Oh, didn't you say she had a red bow and now her hair's in a braid, or little
Yeah.
inconsistencies like that. It's really important to keep track of. And I can't do it without a detailed outline.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So that was a transition for me because I loved the organicness of a short
Mhm.
story, because it was like it's like writing the scene I'm watching in my head out. And
Yes.
when it's just a scene, that's fine. But when you're worrying about a timeline and a whole history of things, that it was just too much for my brain. I had to have
Yeah.
an
I
outline.
think
The
that's
other,
an important point to make too, of like to not hold so dear to what has worked in the past.
right, right.
Like it just might not work. As I get older, I literally that's so weird to say that, but like I can't keep it all in my head. I also can't have everyone talking to me at once. Like you
Yes,
just change.
that's right. You have to adapt. You have to adapt.
Right,
Otherwise, you're
right,
gonna get discouraged, and it's not gonna end up how you want it. So,
right.
again, be kind to yourself. It's
Yeah.
okay to explore, try new things. Go ahead and write a name down, and just so it's there, so you
Yes.
can see it and remember how you spelled it the next
Uh,
time.
and
So
then figure out how it will be pronounced at some point.
that's right, right.
So do
Thankfully,
you
that one.
do
I was
you
gonna
do
say you can wait.
yeah, no kidding. But it will come eventually. Do you have a made up language? Are all the names kind of different?
I do make the names up. I wouldn't say there's a made up language. I
But the
just kind
names
of
are different.
I just start with a letter and then I'll add another letter next to it and I'll be like, okay, maybe this vowel. And then
Nice.
that's how I develop my name. So there's
Very
no
nice. I
like
like that.
nomenclature or anything that one's, yeah, I'm just kind of out there in space with that one, but it
Well,
works.
that's fun. And do you outline on the computer or by hand?
Both. So I
Okay.
have a dual screen on my computer, which if anybody is not using a dual screen, it was single-handedly the most like productivity change I made in my
Really?
life. So I have all these sticky notes on this other screen, and they contain things like, as I'm going through my editing, questions that I would be asking myself if I as a reader,
Mm.
did why did it happen this way, or that way I can go back and again make sure that the realism in the story is buttoned up. But
Oh,
I
that's a good
also
idea.
have like lists of words. So everybody smiles all the time. We all nod our heads. We all said something, but the repetitiveness in a manuscript is not great. So I have just
Hmm.
lists of alternative words that also might work better for the moment I'm trying to describe. And if I
Yes.
if I know that I've said she laughed a bunch of times, I'm like, okay, well, we know she's laughing. Like, what else is she doing? I can put
Yes.
these lists and
Yes.
something that.
Lately, it seems everyone has switched out smile for smirked. And I've gotten lots of books and manuscripts lately where my number one issue is they can't smirk all the time. Smirking has an actual definition.
That's
If
right.
he's smirking constantly at you, you should break up with him.
Yeah, right. It's not what you think it means.
It's not the
He's
same as
smirking all the
smile.
time. No.
Like it
No.
comes with this sort of like, this ego and this I don't know if the younger generation thinks it means the same in their heads. So like, not to us, it doesn't. Like,
No. Nope.
this is so anyway, yes, always beware of repetitive words. That's a good idea though, to have the words there so you don't go down the Google rabbit hole when you're trying to find another
Yeah,
word.
because that's hard for me to. It pulls me out of, especially if I'm in a flow. If I've
Mm-hmm.
got to pull up my browser and start hunting, it's just. I took the time. I sat down one day and I made a bunch of lists for the common things we come across. Even like in building descriptions, I was like, how many times am I going to write doorway? Like
Yeah.
where are we? Are we in a hallway or a corridor or a passage or there's words are so amazing. There's so many words to pick from that I took the
Yes.
time to sit down and make these lists because not only for the variety, but again, to really like put you in the moment. Where are you? Like if you're not really in a hallway, if you're in, a veranda or these, they call them logias. That's probably not how you say it, but that's how it's spelled. And they're these like outdoor covered walkways that kind of like
Ooh,
surround courtyards in castles. I was like,
nice.
is that where you are? Because that's not really a hallway, and I want you to know
Yeah.
where you are.
Yeah.
So these lists are very helpful for me.
Yeah. And I can see how it would actually be more helpful to have that within the first few drafts because by the time you're in editing mode, you know the story so well that you might not catch
Yes.
that anymore.
Yes.
You're going to see the veranda, but you might have said porch, or
Right.
like
Right.
whatever again. So actually having that in the like beginning stages of writing, when you can still be conscious of that. I know somebody's going to disagree with me there, but for me, editing mode is like, I just know it too much, unless you're going to put it away for a couple months and then bring it back out, which I can never do. So,
Right. Me either. Yeah, I can't. Yeah.
but I like that. So you do outlining and you have the list. And what was the other thing you were going to tell us?
So the transition from the technical writing I do during the day to the
Mm-hmm.
creative writing, my technical writing, even though it is technical writing, it is supposed to be written in a very simple, clear, concise manner, because
Right.
you're taking complex medical information and you're relaying it to the broader population.
Right.
So there's a simplicity in my health writing that I always worry translates into my creative writing, because the creative writing is where I get to be poetic. It's where I get to use all
Right.
those wonderful moments of imagery. And I always worry that, uh, I don't always catch, like, am I still in that clear, like, which there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes it's good to
If
have those
that's your
sentences.
voice, but if you don't want it to be your voice, then
Right.
yeah,
I,
can your brain switch like
it's
ChatGPT to just
hard.
say
It's hard. So when I do have, a professional editor who
mm-hmm.
takes the manuscript when I'm finally done with it, whenever that may be. And I mentioned that to her, and I just say, can you just please make sure I didn't go into like simple mode at any point, and
Right.
that the
Yeah.
voice is consistent throughout.
Right. Right. Absolutely. That is a good point to make as well. There are days that you're more tired or you've been doing other things or maybe a life, situation happens. And if you're still forcing yourself to write, it is possible for your voice to change slightly, right? Like
Sure,
whatever it might be
absolutely.
happening. So it's always good to have that relationship with your editor. Like
Yes.
this is the voice I want. If there's ever a time that I change, please like mark it,
Yes.
fix it, right? And that's just comes with like the confidence with an editor. We are allowed to tell our
Yes.
editors what we want the book to be like.
Yes. Definitely have a good relationship with your editor. You should be able to talk freely back and forth, and
Yeah.
and it's just like feeling comfortable with a doctor, right? You want your doctor, you want to feel respected and heard, and all of
Yes.
these comfortable. You should feel that with your editor. It's no different. It's
Absolutely.
really no different. You should have a level of trust and mutual respect, and that way critiques don't come off as criticism. It's
Yes.
important because you're giving your manuscript to an editor to edit, and they're
Yes.
going to come to you with suggestions, and you have to be able to take those suggestions without taking them personally.
Mm,
And
yes.
so I think establishing that relationship with your editor is important.
Absolutely. So you also you've talked a couple times, I guess, with people about fantasy and fight scenes. Do you have fight scenes in your book?
I do have fight scenes
Okay,
in my books.
how did you research that? Are you a fighter? Like how
I
did you do that?
was a fighter,
Oh my
actually.
gosh, okay.
Yes. So it's actually how I met my husband.
That's so
Um,
funny.
I used to be an amateur mixed martial artist, and I did compete. I did compete in MMA
So
and kickboxing.
you got pretty high up. Okay.
No, 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 no. Just
But you
local
did
stuff.
it
No.
you didn't just do a class. You did quite.
Right. No, I did compete. I was on a fight team. And my husband was a professional MMA fighter, so he's retired at this
So
point.
you also get like to be like, here, come do this and make sure it
Yes, he
works.
knows. In fact, in I'm in the editing process of book 2, and I have a scene, and I was like, I know he knows the move I'm trying to describe, and I was like, can you read this and tell me if this is actually what
Yeah.
is this what you see? So he's great. He's great to have as a fact checker. So.
Okay, so if you don't have a husband like that, what would you tell people? Should they go talk to the local, martial arts gym, or how would they figure out how to describe fight scenes, I guess?
You know what? That you actually bring up a really good point, and I'm going to give credit to this to a friend of mine. She's also a fellow writer who she took classes, martial arts classes too. And she said to me one day, she's like, any author who wants to write a fight scene should go and at least take one kickboxing
Mm.
or grappling class to experience what it means to throw a punch or get hit. I mean, obviously, if it's your first class, nobody's going to be hitting you full on in the face. Hopefully, research
Hopefully
where
that'd be
you're
quite this.
going, right? Make sure where you're going is
Be like,
legitimate.
hit me. I need to describe it well. Like, you're insane.
But it's a good way to really understand
Mm.
and add realism to your fight scenes,
Okay.
because another critique is that, again, something that she brought up, I want to give credit where credit is due, is that some books, they'll have your protagonist in training and they've got sharp weapons and they're just out there. Listen, you're not ever going to do that. You're going to have
Yeah.
a dull sword, or like, nobody's going to hand you a dagger and say, okay, come at me, and you don't know what you're doing. There's a process, and I think that being mindful of that, or taking a class and understanding where you're starting, like when you
Mm.
take your first class and don't know anything, and what the instructor
Yeah.
has to show you, and just learning the basics and what that process actually means can help you with those, especially if you're doing a really in-depth, like backstory. How did they get this way? What was their training like?
That's true. That's true. And I don't know why, but it really annoys me when they're never sore.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Even seasoned people after a spar session are sore.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
sore. In
I
fact,
don't
I've
know why it
never.
bothers me so
Oh my
much.
gosh. No, I've done a lot of sports. I've never done anything that has made my entire body sore like martial arts.
I bet. I
Hands down.
bet.
Hands down.
Yeah. So like it will affect, I don't know. There are just, and the problem is you don't want anything to slightly annoy the reader. And so it's worth it to like at least go take a couple lessons, at least go watch and ask, like if you're
Right.
not physically able to take it, and just to add again, like you said, that realism, so that there's not this chance of the reader being like, oh, that's
Yes,
not even true.
yes, that's the reaction you want to avoid. And I find that those reactions happen when something in a fantasy world, right? We're dealing with monsters and dragons and magic, but something in your fantasy world that's also in our real world doesn't make
Mm,
sense.
yeah.
So that's what takes the reader out of your story. It's not these crazy places or
Hmm.
creatures, or calling lightning bolts out of the sky, because we have no way to gauge that. It's
Right.
just not possible here. So
Yes.
what takes people out are the things like she walked 20 miles barefoot and her feet were fine. Things like
Yes.
that are what pull readers out of the story.
Like, do you know how long 20 miles
Yeah,
is?
exactly. That's another point. Is your character traveling all day? And what does that mean? Did they stop to use the bathroom? Did they eat
Yeah.
any food? If they
Yeah.
didn't eat or use the bathroom, they're probably a mess at the end of the day.
Right.
And at least conveying that a little bit, or acknowledging that as an author, I think will help the reader. You don't have to describe every bathroom break. You don't really
Yes.
have to take the time to explain a detailed meal scene, but mention something along the way about grabbing rations or having a drink of water, or especially if they're coming out fine on the other end, because
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
realistic.
Right. Yes. Or have that last scene. Like I think with writers, well, and I'll just say, because lately that's the manuscripts I'm reading, it's a scene, and then like the next scene, even if it's half an hour later, doesn't seem to be affected by what just happened. It's kind of the same thing. If they just walked, if they just did this, she should be rubbing her feet. Like these
Right,
tiny little things, or like somebody's coming to take care of her blisters, and the reader's just absorbing it. You don't have to describe the blisters, right?
right,
But
right.
we're saying like, yes, of course, because she just walked 20 miles. I mean, I stopped reading a book because this guy, the love interest, was just very fit, and he, sporty, and so he went out for his 1 mile run, and I was like, nobody runs for a mile. Like, so
Bless
he
his
ran
heart.
7 minutes. Like,
Bless his heart. He's just genetically
yes,
gifted, I guess.
anyone who works out is like, that's
Right.
that's what you did in gym class. Like, and so it just makes you realize that the author doesn't do that. And so they didn't bother asking. And
Right.
of course, we can't do everything, right? Like, we are not experts in everything, but you could ask a runner,
Yes.
how far do
Yes.
you run every day? And they'll be like, 13 miles. You're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Right.
But it's more realistic,
Exactly.
so it's all these little tiny things that you have to do as a writer. So I agree. If you're going to do fight scenes, which, FYI, all you fantasy writers, TikTok people are starting to complain about them, which is very interesting. Like, all the readers are like, once again with the fight scene that doesn't make any sense. Like, so, we don't have to do everything the readers like, but you do have to pay attention to
Right.
what is being glossed over and what's starting to annoy people. So,
Exactly.
you know, go ask Hope about fighting.
Well, you know what? At least watch an interview, a fighter
Yeah, true.
interview.
Or a
It,
fight. Yeah.
yeah, and just YouTube. YouTube is a
So true.
fantastic resource. They'll teach you how to do anything. So watch an instructional video on there. That's
Yeah.
just put a little bit of time into it, and take some notes on your sticky notes, and then you'll be better prepared to do your fight scene.
Absolutely. So, Daughter of the Void is going to be a trilogy.
It is.
And you said that the second one is being edited now. So do you have like a timeline on when that's coming out, or just a hope?
No timeline quite yet. I'm still doing the developmental edits on it. Those notes that I've
Mm-hmm.
wrote down through the process of, well, what about, why would this happen
Yeah.
and not this?
Yeah.
Going
Yeah.
through and making sure I button everything up. But the bulk of it is done. So I'm hoping with, probably around the same time next year, but that's
2026.
really, yeah, that's
I really admire you for not being. I was wondering if you were going to be like one of those, what do we call them? Oh, with fast publishers, because I think there is some pressure, and there has been for a few years, of like, once you get the first one out, you have to get the other ones out. But I think it has led to not taking the time with your developmental edits and making sure that everything's wrapped up. And so I'm trying to encourage writers of like, it's going to take the time that it takes, but it's better to be proud of it and know that it's exactly what you wanted to write.
yes,
That's
absolutely.
that's
The
my opinion.
internet is unforgiving, and at
So
least if
true.
you and honestly, just it's kind of an awful place. Let's be honest. Like, the
Yeah.
internet can be very cruel and needlessly so. People will rip things apart. So for every 10 people that love your book, there's going to be people who don't like it, and they will not be afraid to tell you that.
I know.
And
I know.
so if you put out your best work, if you love your book, if you're happy with your book, you know what? Everybody's entitled to an opinion, but
Yes.
you can't you have the comfort and the peace of knowing that you love what you did. And I think
Yes.
that is such a shield that you can wear against what they call the internet trolls, because they are out there. It's
Yeah.
sometimes their only goal is to ruin your day. And I
Literally.
and I wish that wasn't the case. I think that's a really sad side of humanity that we get to
Right.
witness, but it is a fact. So
Yes.
be proud of what you put out, and then you're really bulletproof. If you love your work,
Yes.
what else is there?
Exactly. Exactly. That you have no nagging doubt that
Right.
maybe they're right. Like, nope, because when I get the 1-star reviews, I'm like, well, it just wasn't for you. But
Right.
way back in the beginning, I would have been like, well, maybe it's, you know, if I hadn't gotten it edited, if I hadn't gotten it, look through, if I hadn't, well, then I really would have been. But that's just me. But yes,
I know.
I encourage people to make sure it's what you want it to be, right?
Yeah, and I think we all still feel that on some level if you get a really harsh critique, and that's actually a nice way of saying it, because some of these are ruthless. Some people
Yeah, and
they call into
yeah,
question you even being born. They're like, why was this person even born if they're putting out
they
this
should
trash?
never pick up. I don't
Yeah,
know. It's
yeah,
becoming really bad.
it's
But
really bad.
when you, so I got one the other day. It was just very well. It does get to the point where you have to really think about what they're saying, and most of them are quite silly, even if they
Yeah,
are very violently worded.
yeah,
Like, you didn't like a sentence,
right,
you know,
right.
and then you can click on their name and you can see that they give 1 stars to everybody. And then you
Yeah,
go, okay, so you're that person. But but already, like, once you have the confidence in your book of that's exactly the story that I wanted to write, and it's okay that you don't like it, you can sort of approach it differently, right?
that's
Whereas,
right.
um, if you don't have the confidence, yeah, we need to not take their opinion into account, basically.
Yeah, and honestly, so this is a point of debate among a lot of authors.
Mm,
I don't read my reviews anymore.
yeah.
And have people kind of call me out about it and be like, well, how do you know about the things you need to improve? And it's like, I use industry professionals. I have beta
Yes.
readers, but I have alpha readers, I have beta readers, I have critique partners, I have a
Yes.
professional editor, I have the publishing
Yes.
team. And it's not that I don't value the opinion of readers, but these are people who are in the industry and they're giving me a professional opinion on things like
Yes.
plot and character development. And I'm going to trust them. They
Yes.
are my chosen team. I'm going to trust them. And reading my reviews is not going to make me dismiss what my team has told me
Yes.
is good.
But that is a problem that has been curated by authors, in the sense of, like, there is a whole group of authors who did not get industry professionals and used the reviews as like their developmental editors. And that is, in my opinion, not the way to do it, because you're really risking your readership and your kind of business end of it, because many readers won't pick up the next book. And that's just not the way to do it, because they aren't professionals, because it is very opinionated, because it's just an books are art, which is an emotional, like, relationship,
Exactly.
right?
Yes,
And
exactly.
so, yes, unfortunately, that has been a curated issue. But I would say to writers, that's not how you should be doing it.
Yeah, no, no, I absolutely agree. Reviews are subjective.
Yes.
What I love, you might hate, and that's
Yes.
okay. That's
And it's
okay, but it
fine.
doesn't mean that you should change what, as an author, you
Right.
shouldn't necessarily change to adapt to the person who didn't like it,
Right.
because there's
Tolkien's
people who
not going to
loved
go
it.
put a love story at the beginning
Right,
just because
that's
I
right.
love it.
And you know what? For the people who can't get over the point of why they didn't just fly on the giant birds to the mountain, look, he's not gonna. That's not gonna change. It is what it is. Like we gotta accept it.
Right. Exactly. And why it takes forever for him to just throw the ring in, I don't know. Like, it just slow it down, slow it down. Anyway, yes. So we do need to be confident. And yes, it does take definitely somebody who knows what they're doing to look at your work, rather than
Yeah,
just the Amazon reader, because they could
right.
be totally wrong.
That's right.
So many
That's right.
times they're wrong. They don't know what they're talking about, or that it's just emotional. And you are a good writer. You should keep writing, and don't worry about them. I do think it's hard. It's difficult sometimes for people, because they're probably checking their star reviews, and then somehow it changes, and then they can't help but go down and look. And but if it's ruining your day, you shouldn't be reading them. It
Yeah.
really
No.
shouldn't.
No. Again,
So
if you loved your book, what else matters?
yes,
That's the bottom line. The fact that even a handful of people have messaged me telling me that they loved the book, that's great.
that's so wonderful.
That means that somebody else loves the book that I love. So,
Exactly.
and if people don't, that's okay. There's other books out there for them. But
Absolutely.
so yeah, bulletproof yourself. Be proud of what you're putting out there. And again, the time it takes is the time it takes. So
Yes, I love that. So where can people find Daughter of the Void?
Anywhere books are sold, if you've
Okay.
got a local bookstore, you can ask them to get it in, but you can get it online on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, bookshop.org, or directly from my website, hrcole.com.
Awesome. Yes, and just side note, if you have a local bookstore, always ask for the indie author. They
Yes,
can find it,
yes.
and it's very helpful, and it's a way for the local bookstore to find new writers, right? Like, they can't possibly know every book out there. So
Right.
if you ask for it, it's always helpful to the author. But otherwise, you guys can go to hrcole.com, which of course we will have the links in the show notes below. And we'll have your Instagram link. Is there anywhere else that you're kind of active?
No, it's mostly Instagram. I just, you know, I'm in my 40s. I don't have the bandwidth to manage more than Instagram.
No, I just deleted my ex and
Holy
deleted my
cow.
LinkedIn, and I was like, I just don't care anymore.
Yeah, it is, I'm committed to the Instagram thing, and that's all I got right now. That's all I got in me.
I'm
So,
tired, y'all. I'm
that's
tired.
right. I'm doing my best. I just-
Says all I have the capacity for. Yes, I agree. That's all right. So we will have the links in the show notes below. Go check out Daughter of the Void by H.R. Cole. And thank you so much for coming on the show and talking to us today.
Yes, thank you. It was a great time. I appreciate it.